Senior Master Spotty, the black-eyed dog of the 394th Squadron, 5th Bomb Group, 13th Air Force, and in 1944 we had moved from Guadalcanal, Henderson Field, up to Munda, which the Marines had taken after a very bloody fight trying to root them out of coral-type caves in the South Pacific. I first met Spotty after we had moved up to Munda. I suppose it was because it was a smaller base and we were very close, our quarters were close to the runway, and we would spend a lot of time at the runway, and I would notice Spotty. He was a white dog, just a regular dog, and had a black spot like the one you see in some of the commercials on the television. And what I had noticed about Spotty was that he would hang around with a certain crew and crew chief who worked on the airplane. And I noticed that whenever the airplane took off, Spotty was there beside the runway, sitting next to the crew chief on a little hill watching the aircraft take off. And then I noticed that in the evenings, after we came back from the combat mission, Spotty would again be at the same spot, and I noticed that when a certain airplane, the Loving Dove, Lonesome Dove was the name of the airplane, Lonesome Dove would come in, Spotty would stand up, and as the airplane would taxi to its revetment and park, Spotty would trot out to Lonesome Dove and greet the crew. So his ear was attuned to the sound of his airplane, and perhaps the picture of the pretty girl with her arms out like this, like a dove flying. Some years later, in fact about 60 years later, I was presenting my movie film, which I had taken in the South Pacific, 16mm color, and at every presentation of the reunion, the women, wives and so forth, were always asked, tell us about the dog, because they would see the dogs sitting there and then trotting up to the airplane. And I said, well, it did have a tragic ending. And I told them all I knew about the dog and how he would go to the one airplane. And so I told them of the day that we came back from a mission and Lonesome Dove did not come back that day. And the dog sat there on the little hill with his crew chief until well after all the airplanes had come in. And I said, Lonesome Dove never did come back. And I said, there is a good ending to the story though, and that is that the Spotty stayed with the squadron, and he was there when I left to come back. I never knew what happened to Spotty after that. In 2003, I showed the film at another reunion, and one of the men came up to me and he said, I will send you a letter and some pictures of Spotty, and I will tell you the ending of the story for Spotty. Spotty was born under the mess hall at Hickam Field in Hawaii before the war started. And the mess sergeant kind of coddled him and fed him, and when the squadron moved from Hawaii to the Pacific, Spotty went with them. Along the way, he was kind of adopted by this crew chief and the people that worked with the crew chief. And as the squadron moved from Espiritu Santos up to Guadalcanal, and then from Guadalcanal to Munda, and then we moved to the Admiralty Islands where I left the squadron to come back. Spotty actually finished out the war in the squadron in 1945, and the crew chief of the airplane said that, well, Spotty has never been to Australia, because dogs who had been to Australia were not allowed back into the United States because of disease problem. And because Spotty was beloved by everyone in the 5th Bone Group, the Sergeant Major cut a set of orders that said, Senior Masters Sergeant Spotty, tour completed 3.5 years, and they cut orders sending him back to the United States. And the sergeant was able to take Spotty with him, got flight permission on every flight because of the stories of Spotty, and Spotty lived out his normal dog days on a farm in South Dakota.